consideration, discussion, and possible approval of Broken Arrow City Council ward boundaries based on 2020 U.S. Census and authorize the drafting of a resolution and ordinance accepting the same. Farhad.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City Manager, and staff. Statutorily, the city currently has 4 ward boundaries for the 4 council and then 1 councilman at large. The current ward boundaries were approved about approximately 10, 11 years ago, as we do after every decennial census. The ordinance that currently has our existing ward boundaries shown on the Ward 1 being on the northeast side, Ward 2 is on the northwest side, Ward 3 is on the southwest side of the city, and Ward 4 is the east and the southeast side of the city. The U.S. Census population figures were released recently, a few months ago, and our April 2020 population was 113,540, which is almost an increase of 15,000 people over the last census, which is almost a 15% increase in our population. As you all know, and within this report, we've written a lot of background on ward boundaries being redrawn as needed after decennial censuses. So currently, Broken Arrow is the 4th largest city, and we've included some demographic information in your packet as well. And we are the 267th largest city in the country. The ward boundary redistricting criteria, and I won't go through all of the individual items that are listed in there, are fairly obvious. Some of them are statutory by federal law and previous actions. Some are statutory by state law. And then the city of Broken Arrow over the last many decades has adopted our own guidelines, which I'm pretty happy about that we've stuck with over the last many number of years. Our ward boundaries have been concise. They've been on arterial streets. Very rarely they've gone beyond the arterial streets. They have maintained a percentage deviation of approximately 5% or less, and the national standard is almost 10 to 12%. And our city population, based even on our growth, has been evenly distributed in quadrants of 25%. And we have stayed within close proximity of our ward boundaries previously done. About 2 months ago, the council approved a 5-person advisory panel. We met with them at length and discussed several different options. And I won't go through each and every option, but this is our current boundary and precincts. There's a lot of geography involved when you start shifting these lines and precinct shifts and so forth. But again, this is the current information. The plan before us being proposed by the advisory panel and staff is option A, or plan A is what we've recommended. After studying 4 or 5 different options, we've labeled them in the background as option A, B, C, D, and so forth. By the way, the current deviation, if you stay with the current deviation, is well over 12%, which is a little bit beyond the acceptable boundaries. So to bring that number down close to 5%, the advisory committee, along with our staff and a couple of other people, recommended option A. Now, based on the 2020 population, the deviation of that proposal is 5.6%, the deviation being the lowest, statistically the lowest ward and the highest ward. The growth patterns in our city over the last decade or two and over the next few years are favoring ward boundary district number 3 and 1. So to accommodate for that, we overcompensated and accommodated the figures to the 5.6%, which has already in the last 2 years has narrowed down to 5%, and with our projections over the next 24 to 30 months, will come down to perhaps between 3 and 4%. So as the decade progresses, statistically, it will be fairly even for the rest of the decade. The next redistricting required statutorily will be about 10 or 11 years from now. So option A is what is being recommended by the advisory board and our staff. I will go into the details as you may want to and answer any particular questions. Included in your package towards the end is the demographic growth and the historical growth of the city as well. One thing I might add, because a question had come up recently about some jurisdictions based on the type of government require geographic equalization as well. Municipal governments such as ours, based on our state statutes, geographically we do not have to have equalization done for ward boundaries. Currently, Ward 1 has approximately 15 square miles. Ward 2, which is the most compact and most mature and fully developed ward, approximately fully developed ward, is 9 square miles. Ward 3 has 13. And Ward 4, which is the largest geographical ward right now, has approximately 24 square miles.
So if we adopt this, there's more people who can run against me in April.
Yes. And there was a good discussion when you look at the 2020 figures, how our growth is happening in this decade and where it's happening is pretty obvious. One of the maps that is included in your packets, the committee requested staff to show where the hot spots were on growth. So we did a map and study of that map that showed this particular map with the red dots showed the deviation of where the growth circles were. The yellow district, which was accommodated, is a full compact 9 square mile on the west side of northwest side of the city, and so forth. So again, demographically, some of us know the growth that's happening in these areas, so we accommodated and compensated for that with the proposal.
Looks like to me everyone wants to live in Ward 2, but I'm just saying.
I won't go through all the
growth
options.
is
There were
Ward
several
3.
options that we discussed, and they're all in there. Also included is the previous decades of how the council have approved and the deviations that we've had, all listed. This particular map shows the chart of the entire history of Broken Arrow over the last 110 years, and we can see the trends that are progressing.
Well, I really appreciate the panel's work. I know NCOG provides a lot of the data, but the panel has to plow through it, make these recommendations, and I knew it wouldn't necessarily be a fun job. So those who served on it, I really appreciate that work, because it kind of has political tensions, because, I mean, I jokingly said that, but it does. It has, so having a nonpartisan group look at this and give us positive recommendations, I found to be very helpful. I mean, I think I actually went through each one of them, of the proposals, and I personally agree with the panel's recommendation, because Plan A did make the most sense with regard to where the growth is, in regard to the way our community's boundaries or patterns are changing. And I guess because of that, I'll make a motion to approve the Plan A as submitted by the panel.
Okay. We have a second?
I'll second.
The motion and second. Roll call. Thank you.
Is Scott still in my ward? Or my
Yes,
Scott's
you're
ward?
still.
I lost
You're my
Indian-
Scarecrow
I lost Indian
councilman?
Springs.
You lost Indian Springs?
Yep.
And just for brief clarification, there will be a resolution and an ordinance that will subsequently be brought before the body.
Okay, thank
You're
you.
just reviewing that.
Just for voting, but.
Does it becomes an ordinance then? Or-
Yes, sir.
Okay.